I want their sourdough starter to be the cure for a disease that they have been trying to cure on the highest levels forever. And it's not on purpose, it is by pure accident.
I want the sourdough starter to be alive.
Well, yeah. Oh, like talk, like sentient? Like a sentient
I
one?
love that. I love that.
This ain't your grandmother's dusty old poetry book. Fall in, bookworm maggots. This is Poetry Bootcamp, third Friday of every month on the Poets at War Creative Network.
For men grow weary of fairyland when the dragon is a dream, and tire of the talking bird in the tree, the singing fish in the stream, and the wandering stars grow stale, and the wonder is stiff with scorn. For this is the honor of fairyland and the following of the horn.
Noodles. I have jumbo pasta shells. And I have the That's discouraging. It's, oh man, the first ingredient in this bow tie pasta that I got, it's, okay, I thought it was something else, but on the label it says enriched macaroni product rather than just like gluten, wheat, something.
Oh, you guys heard about the butter though, right? Oh wait, you didn't?
Yes.
Yes. You did, but he didn't because he wasn't in the brood during that. There was a thing where Costco had to recall 80,000 pounds of butter because it didn't have a label that said contains milk. And the news stations were literally telling people how to safely dispose of their product or return it. It's butter. There's literally nothing wrong with it. It's butter.
It's just a labeling issue, and it just doesn't say that it's butter.
It is churned
Well, it
milk
says
and
it's
salt.
butter. It just doesn't say it contains milk.
That's stupid.
It is churned milk and salt.
Okay. Could I use the jumbo Italian cells?
Why not?
I guess I will. It's just like annoying that I can't use. But it'll be fine. This will be fine. It's
So,
spaghetti. I already got it. Yeah.
it's been a whole hurricane since we were last doing this one, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
We kind
all
of tried
kinds-
to do one last week, and it didn't work. And then we did a half one,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yep.
a section on the variety show.
Yeah, on the Burt Marsh wiggle, yeah.
Yep.
So whenever that ends up airing, we'll see.
Is this still
But-
not aired? The half show?
What do you mean? Oh,
'Cause
the Poetry Bootcamp?
We
No,
had one that was like a variety show. That was you, me, Brendan, and Daniel, and we like did a bunch of different things. We hit some Burnt Marsh Wiggle stuff. We
oh,
talked
that
about
one's
the future of the network.
okay. I forgot about that one. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's aired.
Yeah.
That's aired. Yeah.
Was
So-
that one the
And then
one I had to
I
leave?
asked some questions about the menu.
What's up, Daniel?
I thought that was the one I had to leave early.
No. We were talking about the one before that where I was at church because I didn't have internet connection yet. After the storm. So, yeah. Well, we're here. We're going to talk about our homeschool Harry Potter. We're going to have some fun with that. I wanted to specifically ask right up front and dive into this. We're making an epic poem. Do we want to follow my formula of 10 poems per episode? Do we want to change that? If not, depending on what we do with that is really going to depend on how we work our outlines. And we're
I think
almost
10
to the point
poems
where
per
we need
episode
outline.
works really well.
Yeah. What do you think, Daniel?
I have little to no opinion on that, as I don't really know. I don't have as much experience with I don't feel like I have a whole lot of experience with this thing just yet.
Right. I gotcha. Well, this should be a pretty simple way of making sure that all of these things come together. Kind of wanted to start talking some outlines when we can get to it tonight. Nothing super hardcore into it yet. But just get some balls rolling on where we want things to start, finish, and end for a season of this thing. If we want to keep it open for a second season, that may or may not change. Any of this stuff may or may not change. But what do we want to accomplish in what would essentially be a first season of this story, or the whole thing, depending on if it's a one season sort of a thing? That's what I'm assuming, is we're shooting for a season more than an episode or a couple episodes. Like, it's either a mini series or it's a season.
Yeah.
We'll go 10 poems an episode at the moment, roughly 10. You know, we can do a little more, a little less. Think of it like scenes. Each poem is a scene. Okay.
That helps. That helps a lot.
Yep. I think of it like a TV show. You got episodes and you got seasons. An episode is 10 scenes, roughly. Okay? Does that make sense? 10 scenes or 10 songs, however you want to look at it. So this is my style of epic poetry. Obviously, like, we can tweak it and change it and make it whatever we want it to be, but it's a good starting point for right now for planning purposes. So, in that regard, we have a fair amount of characters. Alex can bring that up in a few minutes when he wants to. I was just thinking too, if you wanted to put stuff in chat here in Aslan's How, I can just open that up and it comes up really nicely in the way it shows up in the OBS and everything. So that's an option too, as far as sharing stuff.
Instead of sharing my screen, or along with sharing my screen,
depending on what we want to do. I was just giving it to you as an option. So
I should probably get a secondary device to keep up with all this.
Any which way. What was it you said, Daniel?
Oh, I was just saying I need to grab a secondary device.
A second what?
a secondary device.
Okay.
A secondary device, like
Gotcha,
my tablet or computer or something. Because doing this on my phone isn't going to work.
I understand what you're saying. Yep. So, in regard to, I wanted to make sure you weren't saying a secondary hearing device or something like that. I'm like, is he going to be able to participate? What are we doing? Okay. No, but I gotcha. Okay. So, we kind of have this vague idea of our character. Remind me, villain name.
Is it something like? It was something.
We had a good name. Yes, it is Latina.
Oh, we did. What was it?
It's been that long, people. She has a long name, but we did. But we just. But she has a super long name, but she goes by a short name. It's. Hey, we're finding it. We're getting it.
Really, I'm intrigued to see how much pasta with a giant jumbo noodle.
Did we not write it down?
We should have.
I know it's in the episode. Am I gonna have to go look there?
3 hours later.
Spanish name. Okay. Anastasia Rosella.
Yep, that's it.
There we go.
Dr. Anastasia Rosella. We got it. Let's write that down. Oh my goodness.
Writing it down right now.
Oh, that was crazy. Anastasia Rosella. All right. So, now that we have her name again, we have this idea of Dr. Anastasia Rosella rising to power. We have intrigue surrounding that. We can do stuff with adults. We can do stuff with potentially good and neutral parties within the school system as well as outside the school system. And we have the Rut family and what they're dealing with and the other local governments. Generally speaking, what are we wanting to happen? I'm just talking like basic 3-act for the whole season kind of a thing. Like, what are some of our hopes and dreams, even if they're just little snippets of something we could see happening along the way?
Do we
How do you
not
spell?
want to?
How should we spell Rosella? By the way.
I had it Rosella. Simple.
Yep, that's how I did it as well. That works.
Thoughts? Anybody? Scenes? Ideas? Is this more my department?
Are we doing POV from this character's perspective?
Think broader than that. Think about like what you want to happen in this story. We're talking really, really big picture here. And it doesn't have to be like the whole plot. It can literally just be like, I imagine this kind of a scene happening. I imagine this happening to this character, right?
I feel like if we're doing a story about homeschoolers, we have to have at least one scene at one point in time where one of the main characters or one of the homeschooled characters is punished by having their ability to read taken away from them.
That's fun. I like that.
Okay, you've read too much. You've read too much. You need to go do the rest of your chores now. I'm taking your book from you.
Okay, yeah.
That's just such a quintessential homeschool experience. I feel like that has to be in there somewhere.
Okay. One thing could be like if one of the homeschool, we designated how many like siblings this kid has and what the genders of them all were, right?
We did set up the family, yes. We have an older brother and older sister, and then we have what else?
The twins.
The twins, and then they're the middle ones, right?
Yep.
They're kind of in the middle, and then below them, did we have anybody, or is it just the 4?
We have a baby who is like a Jack type character.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's 5.
I don't want the Jack character as their. As in sec, like stop talking for a sec.
1,
No, you're good. You
2,
could talk.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7.
7. Okay, we have 7.
7. Well, there we are. It's oldest son, who's a blacksmith named Isaiah. Second child, daughter Zell. Third son, troublemaker Eustace, Edmund, something like that.
Yeah.
Then Cornelius and Caracus. Then we have 5-year-old Goofy and Dark, and then Jack type baby.
What was the second to last?
A 5-year-old who's Goofy and Dark.
Got it.
I want the goofy 5-year-old that's goofy and dark. Did you say?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. I almost feel like the mom is trying to teach this kid to do something. He's fidgeting with something. She takes that away. And as she comes back, he's fidgeting with like the piece of paper or turning it into something. She takes that away. Now he's fidgeting with like a fingernail that he's peeled off. And they're just like, she can't take everything away.
I gotcha.
I like that. I like that a lot.
That would be good. That would be good action, comedic action to break up an expositional conversation.
Yes. Something serious is happening on the side, and then you just hear the mom. What are you doing now?
Well, okay, so the school,
or even like the mom is having a conversation with the dad in the background over some form of magical communication device or a like magical communication system. I'm thinking like the Iris stuff from Percy Jackson, where it's like a rainbow that you throw a coin into. Something along those lines, or at least with that feel. And the poem starts off with, "Hey, stop fidgeting with the toy and do your homework or do your schoolwork." And then she takes the toy away from him, and then she has the conversation with her dad. You, stop fidgeting with the table. Do your homework.
I just thought of an excellent inciting incident. Because part of the problem has been we're dealing with not a public, but like a public funded private school system, basically. Kind of sort of in this world. And they're competing, and it's a whole thing, right? So these are basically charter schools is what it comes down to. That's the only kind of school that really exists outside of these more rural, situations and everything where people are homeschooling themselves. What if Anastasia Rosella helps enact legislation and is the fueling point behind legislation to make all homeschools additional charter schools and force them into the student exchange program?
Ooh.
Right?
Okay.
That'd be interesting.
Otherwise,
political brain now. What's the rationale behind why that would be good?
Socialize the bumpkins and give the city kids a chance to live out in the country.
Soldiers, prepare for a momentary ceasefire. It's time for a commercial interlude. Calling all companies and individuals with a message to share. Are you looking to reach an audience that marches to the beat of a different drum? If your audience enjoys the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lord of the Rings, chances are our audience are the very people you're looking for. The Poets at War Creative Network, a bastion of Christian artistry, is now accepting new advertisers to join our ranks. Our listeners are the dreamers, the creators, the faithful seeking inspiration in a world of chaos. Don't let this opportunity pass you by like a ship in the night. Your message could be heard by many eager ears from our home front. Act now. Contact our general via email, Joshua David Ling at gmail.com, to secure your spot in our programming. Remember, in these trying times, it's not just bullets and bandages that win wars. It's also books, brushes, and the power of imagination. Advertise now on the Poets at War Creative Network by emailing Joshua David Ling at gmail.com.
Hello, I'm Sarah Levesque, Editor-in-Chief of Logo Sophia magazine. I would like to invite you to explore our Pilgrim's Journal of Life, Love, and Literature, both in visual format and in podcast format. Our goal is to help bridge the gaps between different Christian denominations and traditions. Please visit our website at logosophiamag.com to read or listen to stories, articles, poetry, and more, all for free. We look forward to journeying with you.
Soldiers, advance! We've emerged from the commercial abyss, ready to resume our mighty march on Poets at War.
Make more well-rounded citizens, blah, blah, blah.
Okay. Would it be too insane? Just a question. Would it be too insane to have Narnia be a book series that actually exists in the universe?
I think we could create an analog that could be convincing enough. Why?
Well, I was thinking that'd be funny to have it be like, no, like Narnia, because it's a similar enough world to ours that Narnia is still going to be different.
I'm not following what you're saying.
So the world that we're creating is similar enough to our own world that Narnia could be like, if it was written at this time, Narnia would be like futuristic fiction at the beginning that then comes back to something closer to what people know. Is what I'm thinking.
I'm really
and have it actually be Narnia.
I'm really not following you.
Okay.
Well, okay.
I'm saying I think it would be funny to have Narnia be referenced. Like actually Narnia. I think that would be funny, and I think we could make it make sense.
Well, there's two ways we could make Narnia make sense, depending on what you're trying to do. Are you trying to make Narnia the book or Narnia the world a thing? As a reference.
The book. Just the book.
Just the book.
Yeah.
Okay. like I said, I think if we're making Narnia references, we could totally do it in such a way that it is an analogous reference that people will get right away. I think that's going to be the way to go. But that's just initially what I'm thinking, you know? Or we just quote it randomly. You know, as little nods.
That's it. That's what we should do. That's what you should do. Just randomly quote it. Oh, what's that one book series that says direct quote from Narnia?
Little dark kid gets their stuffed lion taken away, and he goes, "Watch out!" Or she, I think, what goes, "Watch out! He's not a tame lion." You know, stuff like that, right? Like,
yes.
Right. So, yeah, we could do
that's great.
I feel like that would kind of go over general audience heads, but not like...
No, not
the
audience that's
you're the
listen
anomaly,
to homeschool
sir.
Harry Potter epic poetry.
Right. Like,
we've jettisoned general audience a long time ago.
Yeah.
We're way behind.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do we think of the inciting incident of the exchange program? That way we actually get some kids going various places. And one of the things that the Ruts are fighting for is making sure, especially their younger ones, they go with one of the parents goes with them to every class, kind of a thing, right? And they're pushing the envelope there, and that can be, you know, further what's the term? Further friction between the two parties, you know, kind of a thing. I think that's, you know, part of Act 1. Like I said, this is an inciting incident. This isn't necessarily like when things really hit the fan and things get wacky and weird and whatever. We do need to go a little bit more in depth on magic system, I feel like, to really start, you know, getting to where, okay, what will happen as a result of this inciting incident, right? And that goes back to world building. I just wanted to get a little bit of plot down in a very broad sense, so we know what we're doing with some of this world building and it doesn't just spill everywhere, right? That was my hope with talking a little bit more plot. But we can go into the magic system. We can talk more about scenes that we'd like to see. I would like to have a one of the children, probably the older daughter, have a subplot with a boy from King's Eyrie that's even too good for King's Eyrie, kind of a thing. And do the subversion of the subversion where he's actually a prince, kind of, not a prince, but like a legit dude, kind of like Phoebus in Hunchback. You know how Phoebus could have totally just been like a villain and he wasn't. Like he was actually the knight in shining armor. So yeah, I wouldn't mind doing like Phoebus kind of a thing. So, but that's on my wish list. I have spoken it. It exists as far as the podcast goes anyway. Any other wish list items before we dive into some magic system or whatever you guys have?
I'm
only trying to drive this the way I would do it. I'm trying to leave all the room to tangent as far as you guys need to, you know, for this thing, because this is collaborative. They're thinking.
trying to think of like things that I particularly want happening in this.
I definitely want some good in-depth conversations between the husband and wife. I want them feeling like they're being torn apart as a family being a major thing. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want like the juxtaposition of like the main antagonist. What is her like the short name she goes by?
Anastasia.
Anna, probably. Or Anastasia.
Anna.
Dr. Anastasia.
I really want like to like juxtapose of like the chaos of like the family life with her being like the girl boss, and then flip it with the harmony and the peace and everything that they have at the end of the day that they're working for, and then you just see her cat lady.
Right. Yes, the spinster thing. Yes,
Yeah.
I agree. Still thinking, Alex?
Once again, do we want her to be a spinster? Do we want her to be a cat lady, or do we want her to be a sympathetic villain? Not right, but sympathetic. You
Well, I feel
understand
like
where she's coming from. She's not a caricature. At least that's what I was thinking.
Okay, so we've got a Latina in this world. She's obviously called something else as far as her ethnicity, but we have essentially what is a Spanish Latina-ish person. What if she is similar to Encanto, where she comes from a very large toxic family, and that's part of her whole reason for structuring society around school and government and all the rest, as opposed to family.
Yeah, I can see that. Maybe like the same. I'm imagining teenage Anna locking herself in her room while the chaos of the family was going, and then like that's carried into her adult life.
Right.
And I'm seeing that there could be just like I'm seeing the outside, the God's eye view, and I could see how you could make it like this sympathetic character who, just because of her upbringing, has come to really value her own independence, and up to the point where she just kind of throws everybody else, all other connections, to the wayside.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like,
but I don't think
something
that, I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that so much as it is she feels like, okay, one day I'm going to be in charge, and I'm going to control this thing, and I am going to make sure that these horrible, terrible, toxic families are brought into harmony. That's what she thinks. That's her motivation.
Yeah.
But her life is in shambles because she throws everything she has into the work, and she doesn't. I think she shouldn't realize the irony, but she should be chronically lonely because she sees people as something to be sorted and held down and from hurting each other instead of thriving, right? And as a result, she holds herself down. I think it should be something that we should be able to show with the poetry, especially with poetry, without having her realize it. She doesn't realize the irony of her and the sadness of her situation. You know, I don't think she should. So she can be sympathetic without feeling bad for herself.
Yeah. I can see that. Yes.
Because I feel like she would be in denial to some degree about the sadder parts of her story. It's like, oh, look how well I'm doing.
Right.
But don't look at that.
Right. Exactly.
I feel like I'm writing myself.
I think we cracked her a little bit. That's good. We figured her out. So, in that regard, what do we want to tackle? Do we want to tackle magic system? Is there more that we want to talk about on the wish list? Are you writing some of these down, Alex? Wish list items?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I feel like we all got a few wish list items in there. We might have a few more come up. Do we want to talk?
Oh, I'm sure we will.
We did a little bit of magic system talk at the beginning and kind of like how hard/soft we want it to be. We kind of want it to fit within that Harry Potter realm, in general. but have
Mhm.
a tendency toward the more soft amongst the homeschool / rural people and the harder stuff amongst the more materialistic charter schools. Am I correct in that, if I remember? Was that generally what we were thinking?
Yeah.
Okay. There is a flip that we could do with that, where the dark arcane occult sort of a thing is actually prized by the the mysterious being prized by the materialistic system, the gnostic knowledge, all that kind of stuff, over the grounded, simple, useful magic. But I'm not sure I want to do that either. I think we could do both, sort of, in a way, but it could get complicated.
Maybe. I almost like the idea of what if this magic for the normal people has this like normal things but amplified feel.
Right.
So like the mom is singing while she works and the pots are floating and things are moving for her.
Figatus. Anyway. Sword in the Stone. Anyone?
What?
I was referencing Sword in the Stone.
I understood your
Figatus. I was saying if Daniel did. Anyway.
I'm curious is the thing, but
Sword in the Stone. Yeah. The Disney movie. Yeah.
Yeah. I miss so many things.
Sorry, I'm so sneezy tonight. I don't know what's going on with that. You get some ash in your mouth?
No. That's disgusting. Soaked tobacco leaves.
Oh.
That like disgusting black juice that forms at the bottom of the bowl.
Yeah. You got a big thing of juice on that one. Yeah. Yep.
That was awful. I'm done for tonight.
Yep. Oh goodness. So
no, so you were saying like we could flip that on its head and have like the have the materialists prize the occult more.
right.
I feel like we would still want the veneer to be exactly what we were thinking before, how like the people who are farther out in the country, the homeschoolers, the people who are less less of the system are still with a softer have a softer feel magic system, and the people in the schools have a harder feel magic system.
Right.
But I feel like there should be like almost mantra-esque you can't know everything that magic does in the older schools. Like that's one of the things that's ingrained at the very beginning and always taught. You can't know everything magic does.
Right.
Kind of in the same way that Shift from Last Battle uses he's not a tame lion.
Right.
Like that type of feel.
Okay. So what's the opposite of that? What is the flip of that? What is the flip of that?
What do you mean? What is the flip of that?
What is the what would the rural folk, the ruts, have a comeback for that most foundational of principles? It sounds very Socratic in a way, like Socrates. The idea that you can't know everything magic does. The idea that like when you cast a spell, you can't know everything that it's actually affecting. That's essentially what you're saying, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the ruts come back to that would be
I don't need to know.
Yeah, kind of I don't need to know. Either I don't need to know, or it would have to be something like the Isaac Newton, God has made an intelligible world. But there is also mystery in this intelligibility. We can know most of what's going on, but we can never know everything because God moves in mysterious ways.
See,
Something
that's
along those
saying
lines.
saying the same thing, but with a more optimistic feel. Yeah.
Yes. Because like they are talking about the same thing. They're talking about the same phenomenon, but the thing that the Ruts are emphasizing is that like this is God's world. This is how he made it, and we can work inside of those boundaries, and we ought to. Whereas what the school is emphasizing is that we can do all of these things, but you never really know.
So,
okay,
like,
Daniel,
school...
real quick, Daniel, for your sake, I'm going to use a word, epistemology. If you don't know what it means, for the sake of the audience and for you, it means how we know what we know. It is the study of how we know what we know. Okay? Very quickly, bro, what if we went like full epistemological and made the bad guys Clarkians or like extreme end Thomists versus Vantillians? Just saying. In regard to the magic, what would that look like? We come back to that. Anyway, Daniel, what you were saying. I'll explain that in a few minutes. We can come back to that. I like the epistemological approach, but Daniel had something.
I was just seeing, it seems like the school almost sees God as like almost like a Cthulhu character.
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah. Ooh, that's...
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of H.P. Lovecraft's work that I've stumbled into, he has this horrific view and understanding of God as just this cruel and just a sadistic monster rather than like a fully fleshed out thing.
Do you realize what we're doing?
Go ahead.
We're turning the school into the NICE from That Hideous Strength.
Oh.
Yes and no. That Hideous Strength, C.S. Lewis, the space trilogy, the end of the space trilogy.
I know that one.
Oh, you do know that one? Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
I know that one.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Alex.
We're turning the school into that hideous into the NICE. In the same way that the people see it in the book, because the people see, it's the National Institute for Coordinated Experimentation.
Right.
They're trying their best. They're wanting to make sure that we have a better world after the war.
Right.
But you have the inner ring that is actually occultist.
I mean, yeah, we are doing that part of it. I don't think that they are so singularly focused as nice, though. I think that our main villain might be, but I don't think the whole organization sort of is, or that there's an inner ring that really is singularly minded. I think it is just her, kind of, sort of, in the singularity of mind. And everyone else is like, let's just build a better tomorrow.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but that's what I'm thinking. Let me very briefly break down the epistemologies, and this is going to be so simplified that it's going to barely help, but I'm going to say it anyway. Van Tillian would be the good guys. Van Til is basically the idea that all wisdom begins with the fear of God. It's very, very straightforward biblical. If you've ever heard the term presuppositionalism, that's what you're going to get. Basically, it's the idea that all assumptions lead back to the assumption of God. And the only way that you can really work from anything thought-wise is if you assume God. Everyone assumes God not everyone assumes that he's good, right? And they assume things about him that are wrong. But no one really can actually work from not believing that there's a God, because it is incoherent logically, right? They say they do, but they're actually saying there is a God and I hate him, right? So that's kind of the idea of Antillianism. This is epistemology. This is all that other kind of stuff. Thomism is a lot more integrated. There's a lot more focus on what we do know from natural revelation, meaning like life and seeing things around us, and how even atheists can understand 2 + 2 = 4 even apart from God. But the thing is, you can't assume that it's true. This is where Vantillianism comes in. You can't assume that it's true unless you assume God. Otherwise, 2 + 2 can be cucumbers, right? They can be whatever you identify it to be, honestly. But there are great Thomists out there. Your brother is one. That's a whole thing. And they do a great work, generally speaking. Then there's Clarkianism. And Clarkianism is a whole other weird branch of stuff that basically the idea is axiomatic. It says that all of the individual propositions made by the Bible are what is true. Meaning everything that the Bible posits is true, basically. And that is the entirety of truth, from which other sub-truths, which aren't actually primary truth, can be based off of. And there's all kinds of weirdness that comes out of that, because then you have to say that there is some way in which and there's no such thing as analogy in Clarkianism. Everything is like one-to-one truth. So you have to essentially figure out how there is some kind of way in which you shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk is true, and you have to understand all the points that that verse is from the Bible. You shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk, right? You have to look at all the different points in which that makes that axiom eternally true. It also believes that there is not a qualitative difference between our knowledge and God's, but a quantitative difference, meaning if man could live forever, he could understand everything God does. Vantillians say no. Our knowledge is analogous to God's knowledge, meaning our knowledge is we're a creature, he's the creator, right? It's a different type of knowledge. Clarkianism says basically, like, if it's not the same thing, it can't be true knowledge. It cannot be true truth. Yeah, so you get the idea. Yeah. So you got the 3 basics there. And so I'm saying we make them Clarkian Thomist mixture, and we make the Ruts Vantillian. In a way, in a sense, when it comes to magic specifically. Magic is how you see God. That's kind of where we're getting at, I think. It at least has a lot, because I think both sides are openly acknowledging that the primal force, whatever you want to call it, of the universe, the originating force, the God, most people would call it a person, but not everyone would talk about him like a person. They talk about him like a force, right? Is the thing from which magic comes. And we're trying to figure it out to reach into it and take what we can without slipping into the abyss. That's the way that they would look at it.
So, do we want the school to be Clarkian, or do we want them to be Rousseauian?
How would Rousseauian work?
Like, I'm using Rousseauian as a generic Enlightenment philosophy.
Okay.
Not specifically Rousseauian philosophy. So I should say Enlightenment. Do we want them to be like children of the Enlightenment? Because
I would
that
argue
would be
Clark is, but that's a whole other. It's Hellenistic.
I feel like we don't want to have the Thomists, like, not in season 1,
Right.
but looking forward for season 2, because I'd like to see this do multiple seasons.
Yeah.
I'd like to see a like meeting of the minds of the homeschoolers and the like religious private schoolers.
Okay. Yeah. I
And
could
the
see that.
religious private schoolers are the Thomists.
Right. Okay. I could see that.
And I
in
feel
which
like
case, why don't we just say
I feel like
Socratic Hellenists?
Yeah. That works.
So the bad guys are Socratic Hellenists. They're Socrates.
Wait.
They're the only thing we can know is that we know nothing. And basically, like, to know something is to become more like God.
Soldiers, stand at ease. We're taking a brief intermission to resupply our creative forces with a commercial break.
I'm Ian Wilson, and I create graphic art using primarily traditional methods, supplementing with digital where it's needed. I use a real pen, a real paper, a real graphite to make my art. I like to feel my art. I've always been this way. I love the feeling of a pen or pencil in my hand, the sound of graphite scratching paper, and I love the sight of a nice black line making its way across the page. So why choose traditional art over digital? Traditional art has an organic, natural quality that seems to be missing from most digital illustrations. The illustrated books and comics that were made in the days before digital have an excellence and staying power that is just as vibrant now as it was decades ago. These are the stories that stay with you. Dr. Seuss, Winnie the Pooh, Where the Wild Things Are. People still read these. I'm currently working on my own graphic novel series, Legend of the Swordbearer, and I've also had the privilege to draw graphics for 2 motion comic series, along with illustrations for a small magazine, Logosophia magazine, and various book covers. Don't let traditional art fade into the dust. Help me keep it alive. You won't regret it. Visit my website at ianthomaswilson.com for more info.
Attention all Christian writers and creative peoples! Are you searching for a place to share your work and receive encouragement from fellow wordsmiths? Look no further than the Broodcast. Inspired by the legendary Inklings of old, a group of writers who banded together during the Second Great War. The Broodcast is your monthly gathering for inspiration, fellowship, and critique. Join us as we share our stories and support our fellow soldiers on our creative missions. Enlist in the Broodcast community today at joshuadavidling.com/brood. Travel cyberspace. Serve the greatest cause. Join the ranks of the Brood today. Meet the Brood. Brendan Sunshine.
A professional videographer and video editor, Brendan mainly works with Christian organizations. Brendan is a visual storyteller. He taught himself drawing, painting, comic writing, 3D modeling, animation, game design, and writing, among a myriad of other topics.
To see more of Brendan's stuff, check out his YouTube channel, Enchanted Cosmos Studios, and stay tuned to Poets at War.
Hi, I'm Brendan Sunshine, and you're watching Poets at War.
Soldiers, regroup and march forward. Let the battle of ideas reignite on Poets at War.
Right? I think that all basically fits.
To increase in knowledge is to reach towards the divine.
Right. It's to be more powerful. Yeah. It's basic power dynamics, right? Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Very simple
and now we're dealing with enlightenment categories.
Right. And Hellenistic and all that stuff. It all ties together. So we take that to the Van Til side. We're talking about working within the framework that God has made. Some of these ideas are more Platonistic than Socratic, right? They're more Neoplaton, not Neoplaton. What's the term? Christian Platonism, basically. They're more Christian Platonism. The idea that there are the forms of forms, all that other kind of stuff. So we've got a basic philosophy encounter. So how does that work itself out in actual magic? I like the idea that singing is more incorporated in the rural forms, and it is considered more crude unless you have a choir. I think they're going to have like choirs and orchestras if they're going to do a proper incantation or song, right? I like the idea of magical songs being called incantations, right?
Yeah.
So, basically, like anytime they're going to do,
I feel like Dr. Sunshine would appreciate that.
yeah. So, if we're gonna call them incantations, why would they want and need a choir, versus like having a person sing it? I would argue it is because the only way to make a single person or just a couple people, quote unquote, powerful enough is for it to come from the heart. And most of their experiences have a more like practiced, empty your mind sort of a feel to it. Because we can know nothing, right? Except, that sort of a thing.
Almost like the difference between like the world's form of like meditation, like Eastern forms of meditation, would be like empty your mind. A more biblical, grounded, realistic, good form would be filling your mind with something.
Yes. And filling your heart and mind with the song, focusing on the words and channeling your voice into the words, right? It's a more bardic form versus a more monkish form in a way, right?
Yeah.
I like that. I like bardic versus monkish.
Yeah.
I much like the idea that the rural forms of magic, for them, it's just kind of like everyday occurrence. It's like, magic is normal. What's normal is magic.
Now that goes for songs. So we've got that for incantations and word magic, that sort of a thing. And I think you could make the same case for basic, like, spoken spells as opposed to singing. I would say incantations are more powerful, that kind of a thing. What do we make of chemistry and potion related, alchemy, all those categories? Chemical, alchemical, all that stuff. What would be the approach from this sort of Platonist versus Socratic sort of approach? Christmasism. Okay, on the part of the good guys.
Yeah. Potions and alchemical stuff are business. That's how magic intersects with the economy.
Gotcha.
And so, like, the Ruts, or probably not the Ruts, but probably like a family friend, like friendly family to the Ruts. Maybe some other maybe they're other homeschoolers. Maybe they are just people who are involved in the what's the school that's near them? The Hugh Vernon Academy of Magic.
Yes.
Maybe they are maybe they are selling selling their potions and stuff like that. That's how they make their income. But they also are like very generous people, and so they will they kind of devalue their own product, because if people like really need it and they can't pay the price for it, then they're just like, yeah, take it. We'll come by and get some eggs for you, like bartering almost.
Okay, so
instead of specifically Christmasism, like barter economy versus market economy.
Okay, I'm enjoying that. I'm trying to understand the other side of it. What's the other side of the coin? What would the Socratic method produce? That sort of a thing, like the sort of like analytical side. Like, are we gonna just have medicine at that point? Like, what are we doing?
No, it's full blown capitalism. Full blown capitalism in that, like, you're trying to stomp out the other you're trying to beat the other competition. That's what you're doing. So you're constantly trying to increase your potions and power and performance and that type of stuff. And basically, the potion sellers from the other side become big pharma, except with magic.
So we're dealing with secret recipes.
Yes, exactly.
as a common thing, keeping secrets as opposed to sharing recipes and things.
Yep. Yeah. Though I feel like you could also I feel like you could also have it be a touch more nuanced by saying, like, the family that the Ruts are friends with do have a secret recipe. It's been passed down from father to son to father to son to daughter to mother to like all that type of stuff, all the way down for a long time.
Right.
The difference is that the Ruts friends will give you their stuff.
All right, wish list entry. Please write this one down. I want their sourdough starter to be a plot point. I want their sourdough starter to be the cure for a disease that they have been trying to cure on the highest levels forever. And it's not on purpose, it is by pure accident.
I want the sourdough starter to be alive.
Well, yeah. Oh, like talk, like sentient? Like a sentient one?
I love that. I love that.
That is fun. That is fun.
I love that the starter is like a family friend.
Well, it's like, you know, Men in Black?
Yeah.
No.
No. There's
the
the
Men in Black
scene where
movies?
there's like, yes,
No,
the
I've seen 'em.
movies. They open up this one locker and there's like this full-on civilization of like bacteria or whatever.
Yeah.
That has just been living their life, and then you close the door and then you open it and then it's like they've moved 100 years into the future, and then you just do it again and they're like in the Stone Age, you do it again. Now they're having a war. Now they have a utopia.
You could do that, or you could do cranky old grandfather starter kind of a thing, right? Just
okay, yeah.
You could do that as a singular character, and he's like, I don't know. There's a lot of funny things you could do with that. Like he's just you could do some. Go ahead.
Well, he could age. Yeah, I mean, we've already said he, so I guess it's a he.
I like it being a he.
I like it being a he too.
Yeah.
I like the idea of cranky old grandfather complaining about the quality of wheat now versus what the wheat was whenever he was a kid.
I like the idea that someone brings up the fact that he is a sentient starter, and he's like, yeah, you just like, then he gets angry and cursy and starts talking about how you're ripping pieces off of him and throwing it into the oven and blah, blah, blah. But like, generally speaking, he doesn't even want to think about that. So thanks for bringing it up. You know? Like,
yeah. Yep.
I'm just living my life over here.
This reminds me of a school assignment I had as a teenager. I was asked to make, it was one of our mom's friends had asked, she realized we never had writing assignments before, and she took it upon herself with our parents' permission to ask us to write her a short story. And mine was about pieces of bread that were being taken out of the bag and being put into the toaster.
There you go.
And like, if they were like, I forget everything, all the names for everything was backwards because they're seeing it from the inside of the label. So instead of like honeybee, it was like yitnip with or something like that.
Right, yeah.
So it just has the same cadence and vibe. If I can find it, I'll send it.
Yeah,
absolutely send that. That sounds great.
I mean,
okay, so what else was on our wish list? Sourdough starter cures a deadly disease. Kid getting banned from reading.
I mentioned that I want the older daughter to have some kind of romance. I think there's a chance for a subplot. Particularly, here's what I'm thinking. Okay, right? I'm thinking some of the very first children that are chosen to be this is like more going back to plot a little bit, but basically Caraticus and Cornelius are so good in their community that at just everything, like they're just really, really active in the life of the community in ways that, like, yeah, those little rapscallions, they're pulling pranks and stuff, but they're also helping people. They're just really like in people's lives. And so like the whole little, you know, sub town that they live in, you know, kind of on the border, everyone knows them, everyone likes them, and word reaches them And they're chosen specifically because of that, because of all the good deeds they do, to be the first exchange students from the country to probably Hugh Vernon. If we start there, right? And so basically, like, first season can be at Hugh Vernon. We do a second season, it can be at another school. They get transferred because they're moving up. They're doing so well academically that they're doing awesome, and they start to bring other members of their family into other schools, at which point we can have the daughter have a relationship with one of these other, like the Phoebus type character that I mentioned.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
that's kind of and the family are trying to protect them at the same time, like, you know, it's a whole thing where they're trying to remain a family and they're being ripped apart at every turn, and it starts to turn more and more malevolent as we go along, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm thinking. So part of it's going to take place at school, part of it's going to take place at home and in the community, and we're going to show how the school sort of does in some cases rip them apart, but they come back together stronger, right? In various ways. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, like big picture, episodically. Other wish list items. Anastasia Rosella is sympathetic, but not in her, but she doesn't realize that she's, you know, whatever. Go ahead.
Wish list was like plot points and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So like that's a character thing.
Points?
We already decided that.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out like plot point wish list. Daniel, did you have one from earlier?
Like big ticket plot points. I think
I think you had a plot point wish list or wish.
Yes, it was one with the kids. The taking stuff away, and you can't keep taking stuff away.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that would work well with an expositional dialogue breakup. Yeah.
The little like rambunctious ADHD kid who you can't get to focus on this thing. Whenever you take away this, he's. I based it off of a story that happened whenever I was a kid. I started tapping my pencil. My mom takes away the pencil. I grab a little eraser. I'm playing with the eraser. She takes away the eraser. I'm start taking the paper and I'm folding it. She takes away the paper, and then I'm tapping away, and she's like, I can't win. I can't win.
All right, I think we've got a pretty good amount of stuff to go on to really start forming this thing.
I need to get more world building stuff before we close out the show.
Okay. All right, let's talk more world building then. Whatever you need to get.
Okay. How analogous to Europe do we want this world to be? Is the core question. Because if we're wanting it to be very analogous, that makes my job a fair bit easier, because I can like create a analog for the pagan religions that have been replaced with Christianity. I can create an analog for Islam, but if we don't have an analog for Islam, if we don't have an analog for the pagan religions, then we have to do a lot more intense world building to figure out exactly how Europe got to be like Europe is without those battles. Because, like, Spain doesn't exist in its current form without Islam.
Right.
That type of stuff. Like, the battles that have shaped Europe are infinitely important to the actual creation of the culture of Europe. So how closely analogous do we want this to be?
All right, now let's hold up 1 second here. I think it should be very analogous, but we should change one major thing.
Okay.
As far as Islam goes specifically, we should change it from specifically Islamic to jinn.
Okay.
Like actually a fey folk that came from a far distant place and conquered, right? And so Anastasia Rosella, by virtue of being Spanish, she's really from Spain, our analog to Spain, would be probably 1/6 gin.
Oh, I like that.
You see what I'm saying? So I think our Norwegian region are elves. Our Scandinavia region are elves. And we can do some humanoids that way. I don't really want to do dwarves. I just have a feeling that dwarves are going to complicate things. And I really don't feel like this world needs that.
Things.
Yes, because underground.
Yes.
But I like the idea of elves being up there, having gin, and then potentially another fae folk more in the British Isles that are. I kind of want the fae of the British Isles analog to be somewhat Native American in texture. And when I say that, I don't mean like
that'd be interesting.
And when I say that, I mean like they are fading out. They are dying off. They're sort of cordoned off into their own lands, into their own mounds. You follow me?
Yeah.
That's just me spitballing, but I do want to have different races, but I want it to be different races that can reproduce with humans and they integrate as different races.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. So.
Okay. So, do we want to trying to figure out how I think we could swing it that Europe is still pretty similar to the way it is in like the 1850s. If we say that like at the close the Crusades stopped because instead of Christianity or like whatever our analog to the Crusades is, instead of Christianity just getting tired of fighting, and like just holding the line instead of pushing back farther into Islam, Islam actually gets converted.
I got a better situation.
Okay.
Because I really do want there to be a gin lingering threat that we can play with. Like an Eastern gin, right? What if the Reformation, the reform forces came to the aid of the Polish guy, I can't remember his name right off the top of my head, in the Siege of Vienna, and they drove the hordes back more permanently, and they actually like began the Christendom 2.0 there instead of the ongoing Catholic Protestant thing. They actually started to mend some of the issues at that point.
I like that. We need to actually flesh out exactly how that happened.
Yes.
But I really like that as an idea. I'll need to redraw my map a little bit.
Yeah, a little
like
bit.
Not the geography itself, but the borders. I'll need to redraw that to make sure that actually fits. Because I was working with a like very analogous Europe situation, so we can figure it out. That'll be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm thinking. That way we have a more united Christendom sort of situation where everyone is like culturally religious in the 1850s, right?
Yeah,
roughly. But they're all sort of homogenous. They might have slightly different views here or there, but they're still kind of a general churchish culture, right? And then or religious culture. We might not have as much of a institutional church in this world. I'm not really sure. We can talk about that and decide later on the specifics, but what I'm thinking is with all that, we still have the lingering Jin threat, but we also have two sides that were broken but came back together to drive back the Jin, which seems way more usable in our story than a more current analog or a more perfect analog to Europe in the 1850s.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that.
So, Yeah, there's a very idyllic nature to where they're at, and it should stay that way until there is an outside threat or an inside threat in the case of the school, right? In the case of the schools.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts
Okay.
before
That's great.
we
I can definitely start working from there.
Yeah, any thoughts before we wrap the show part? We'll still talk whatever, but
I can't think of anything, to be honest. I feel like I contributed much in terms of the big
you contributed
picture
more
stuff,
than you think
but,
you did. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but no, like I feel like most of where I find interest is like the everyday life of these people.
Yes, and that's one of the reasons I want you here. So, all right, everybody, be your family's bar. Do not turn to the right or to the left, and the Lord will be with you wherever you go. We'll see you next time in the trenches on Poets at War.
For the horn was blown in the heart of the night that men should rise and ride, keeping the tryst of a terrible jest, never for long untried, drinking a dreadful blood for wine, never in cup or can. The death of a deathless dragon, that is the life of a man!
No mamby-pamby beatnik coffee lounges here. This was Poetry Bootcamp. Third Friday of every month on the Poets at War Creative Network. For more, visit joshuadavidling.com.